Bill Parrish. Welcome to
Yeah.
Lamps Lab.
Good to be here, man.
That's what I call this. Lamps Lab. It just was something that sounded good. A little alliteration in there.
Yeah.
So happy to have you. This is like, as you know, we just beginning this or whatever. So we're gonna start like from the beginning of your story, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Just going back. So
how far back you want to go?
well, we'll see. We'll see. So
Okay.
basically, you were born where?
In Glendale.
Glendale.
Yeah.
Cincinnati,
Ohio.
Glendale.
Yeah.
And what was it like growing up in Glendale?
It was like pretty much any other place that it was, you know, growing up in Hamilton, it was kind of a similar way in terms of how the community worked. And, you know, it was a tight community where everybody shared everything. So we could have been considered country because everybody had gardens and we played baseball and, you know, sports in the field, but then we play in the street, you know, wherever. It was kind of that kind of community, close-knit. Church was the center of the community, and so everybody went to church. If you didn't go to church, then you didn't come outside until after 1 o'clock, because that's when the church people came home. So, yeah, it was a really close community.
And going back a little bit, I just missed, but just to let everybody know, you do several different things, from being an artist, author, singer.
Yeah.
And also we'll get into, you know, kind of what you're doing now with Eckstein and all of that stuff, but I did want to mention that.
Okay.
So kind of back to growing up, what were your parents like?
Well, I had strong parents, just like anybody else. Strong dad. My mom was pretty strong too. And we grew up with the discipline of yes ma'am, no sir, you know, kind of that sort of discipline. Respect was really big. So you couldn't, like I called my brother stupid one time, so I really got in trouble for that. But both my parents were really strong on discipline. And so we came up, that was sort of the tradition of the community, strong parents, but then the extended community also had permission to be strong with you. So there was a great foundation there of discipline, and you knew there wasn't gray areas. It was like right and wrong. So I enjoyed that. It was good for me because I think growing up and having that discipline, that pattern set for you, then you kind of knew what the boundaries were. We all kind of understood, you know, what the rules were and what would happen if you didn't play by the rules. Right. So discipline was a big deal. So, you know, we got our share of whoopings that we called then. And I didn't get as many because I had a tender behind, so I didn't want to get as many as my brothers did. So, yeah, but that was a community. You know, it was my parents. You know, my dad they were both hardworking parents. So we saw that. My dad had a lot of friends, black and white. So we saw that aspect of, and there was no real difference. They all came to the house. Our home was open, so whoever was there at dinner ate. So if your friends were over, you know, you ask them if they want to eat, and depending on what you had, they would stay, or if they had something better at home, they would pass on it. And same way with us, if we were at their house, you know, it was all of that. It was really the idea of growing up, you know, what you would like for it to be. Your friends were important. You know, playing and creating, exploring in the woods, you know, all that sort of stuff. Creating games, you know, climbing trees, stuff like that. Right. Yeah.
What did your parents do, like, for a living?
Well, my dad, he worked for Princeton for a while. He was security for Princeton for probably about 10, almost 15 years. And so that made it a little difficult for me when I was in school, because your dad is not the most popular person at the school. And then when Lincoln Heights merged with Princeton, we had some riots and stuff, so my dad was kind of the heavy with that. And so he had a reputation for being tough, and everybody liked him, though. He was well liked and respected. And then my mom, she worked for Wyoming Bakery. She did, just in customer service and made cakes and stuff like that. And,
I love that place.
And yeah, so it used to be for your birthday come, you get a Wyoming Bakery cake. So it was, it was really one of the perks of it. And then before I left the city, I used to go by there all the time in the mornings, to just see Mom. But then, she always had some of those smiley face cookies or something. She'd slip you something to, to hold you over at lunchtime or whatever. And, but yeah, it was, hardworking people. That's all. And there was a number of us. There's 14 of us. I'm number 11. So,
really?
Yeah. So it was, How
was that growing? A lot of 14 siblings you meant, right?
Yeah.
Or 13 siblings of you. Well, how is that?
Well, they it's like most of us are a year apart, so it was kind of like, wow. And then I have brothers who are 10 months apart, so it was all about that. Growing up was reproducing, and so but I was number 11. I was the oldest of the little boys, so I had 2 younger brothers and a younger sister who I was responsible for, and that's how the hierarchy was. It was big boys, little boys. My youngest sister, there was a big gap between her and my older sisters, but my big sisters are still my big sisters. Right. And but they had to break it down like that because we're so big and assign responsibilities like that. So if there was a chore that needed to be done, it was a big boy chore. My dad might see me and say, hey, go get one of the big boys to come and do this. Or if it's a little boy chore, hey, go get one of the little boys. He didn't call us by name because, or he would say to me, hey, go get one of the big boys. So I'd go to one of my brothers and say, hey, Dad wants you to come. And they say, hey, am I the first one you said something to? Why don't you go and tell? I said, no, you need to go, because I would get in trouble. At a certain point, Dad's expecting somebody to show up. And he sent me to tell them. So, it was that kind of how they managed. I think that was the more of how you manage having so many kids. There was a lot of rules and systems in place, and they were effective. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know you had that many siblings.
Yeah, most people, because, when my time after later on we could talk about it, but, my time in Hamilton with, God's Way and all that stuff, well, I just kind of came out of the blue, so they didn't really know a whole lot about me. They just kind of knew, well, he can sing and he's going to be, we're going to be in this group. So then later on when they found out, they were kind of like, whoa, so yeah.
So you talked about like the community atmosphere, and just to touch on that a second.
Okay.
How do you view like the major difference from then to like now? Because I would assume I've heard stories before of like if you were seen doing something by the neighbor down the street, like you kind of mentioned, they would correct you, like your parent may correct you. But you wouldn't really see that now, or it would turn into something really big now. What's kind of your thoughts on how that is?
Yeah, I can. As you were saying that, I was thinking about an example because they had permission to discipline you, like whoop you behind if you were doing something. But I'll give you an example. We played basketball all the time, and on our side of the community, we couldn't keep strings because they was always burning. They was we was playing all the time. But on the other side of the community, on the white side of the community, they didn't use their courts. So we had burned our strings down, and me and my brother next to me, Daryl, I said, well, they don't use the strings over at the athletic field. Let's go over there and get those nets. So we go over there, and I hoist him up, and he gets the strings and that. Well, meantime, that was my summer job. I was a swimmer, so I had water safety. I was going through water safety instruction, and I was a lifeguard. And the guy, Mr. Straub, who ran the park, he lived right there on the edge of the park. And so we're getting this, and he sat in his chair. I go over to his house all the time after work and just hang out. His wife would fix food for me. She bossed him around and stuff. She was a little lady. She bossed him around, and he sit in his chair and read the newspaper and stuff, but he could see right over where the park was. So he saw me hoist Daryl up, and we got the nets, and we got home. It was time for dinner, and we're sitting getting ready to eat, and my dad says, "Hey, son," he says, "I got a call from Mr. Straub, and he said he saw two of my boys taking the strings off of the court over at the athletic field." And I said, "No, those wasn't my boys, because they know better than that." So he's looking at us. We had lost our appetite at this point. So then he just says, "When you're done, I want you to go over, get those strings, take them back over there, and put them back up." So we thought about running away, because we knew, like, stealing, that was a big thing. But we knew that we had a bunch of older brothers who would have to come and get us, and they literally have to carry us home. So we went and we came back. He said, "When you get home, I got something for you." So we got disciplined. But the next morning, I ride to the pool with Mr. Straub. So I go over to his house, and I get in the car, and we're riding, and I said, "Man, Mr. Straub," I said, "I can't believe that you ratted me out to my dad like that. I thought we were friends." And he looked at me, he said, "Son," he said, "I've been friends with your dad a lot longer than I've been friends with you." All he did was pick up the phone, because he could have opened the door and hollered at us, said, "Hey, boys," or whatever. He just picked up the phone, called my dad, and said, and so that's how it was. You know, you didn't know who was watching you, but he had permission to come out there with a belt if necessary and wail on us if that's what he felt like he was doing. And yeah, so I think there was something about that. Some people might see it a certain way. I see it as community, you know, that we had a solid community, and black and white. You know, Mr. Straub was white, so he didn't, you know, nobody had skin in the game. They just did what they felt they were led to do, or what my dad would expect them to do. Right. So yeah.